Imagine strangers deciding who owns your house, without you in the room. In 1884, that's what happened to Africa. 14 European powers met in Berlin to carve up the continent. Otto von Bismarck, the German chancellor, hosted the meeting, not to help Africa, but to keep Europe from fighting itself. They drew borders on a map, splitting kingdoms, families, and cultures with a few strokes of a pen. No African was invited, no one to say, "We live here, we have our own societies." The Berlin Conference set off the Scramble for Africa, a race to claim land and resources. The borders were arbitrary, cutting through communities and forcing rivals together. These lines, drawn by outsiders, would fuel conflict for generations. For Europe, Africa was just a warehouse of riches: rubber, diamonds, gold, cocoa, palm oil. The conference gave Europe a green light to loot, all under the guise of civilization. Treaties were signed, hands shaken, and the fate of millions sealed, without their consent. The colonization of Africa began not with a battle, but with a meeting in a cold European city. The logic was simple: take what you want, because you can. Africa's voice was silenced, not because it had nothing to say, but because it was never handed the microphone. The consequences of that silence still echo today. The starting gun for colonization had been fired, and the race for Africa was on. After Berlin, the invasion began. European powers raced to grab entire countries. Britain claimed a swath from Cape Town to Cairo, targeting resources and trade routes. Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Egypt, all fell under British rule, often overnight. France seized West and North Africa, pushing assimilation, trying to turn Africans into Frenchmen. Belgium's King Leopold II took the Congo as his personal property, unleashing terror for rubber. Portugal, Germany, Italy, and Spain joined in, each grabbing their share. By 1914, 90% of Africa was under European control. Colonization was about one thing: exploitation. Railways led from mines to ports, not for Africans, but for shipping resources to Europe. Cash crops replaced food, causing famine and dependency. Taxes forced Africans into mines and plantations for pitiful wages. Hospitals and schools, only if they served colonial interests. The system was designed to enrich Europe at Africa's expense, and it worked exactly as planned. Africans never simply accepted colonization. Resistance was everywhere. The Zulu kingdom stunned the British at Isandlwana, proving African armies could win. The Ashanti, led by Queen Mother Yaa Asantewaa, fought for their sacred golden stool and their freedom. "If the men won't fight, we women will," she declared. In Sudan, Muhammad Ahmad, the Mahdi, led a massive uprising, capturing Khartoum and establishing a state. These weren't isolated acts. Across Africa, people fought for land, culture, and dignity. They used every tool: spears, strategy, and sheer will. Even when outgunned, they never stopped resisting. Defeats became legends, fueling future generations. The colonizer's story of passive Africa was a myth. The real story is one of constant, courageous resistance. From Ethiopia's mountains to Central Africa's forests, the fight for freedom never died. The spirit of resistance was never broken. Every act of defiance kept hope alive. Colonization was met with courage at every turn, and that courage shaped Africa's future. The world wars changed everything. Europe's empires dragged Africa into their conflicts. Hundreds of thousands of Africans fought, often by force, for their colonial rulers. They saw the myth of European superiority shattered in the trenches. Soldiers returned home with new ideas and a burning question: if we fought for your freedom, what about ours? The wars left Europe weakened and broke the old order. The US and Soviet Union, new superpowers, opposed colonialism. African leaders seized the moment, organizing parties, rallies, and newspapers. They learned the language of politics and international law. The fight shifted from spears to ideas. The seeds of independence were planted in the chaos of war. A new generation was ready to lead. The world had changed, and so had Africa. The dream of freedom was now within reach. Out of this new energy rose Pan-Africanism, the dream of unity for all people of African descent. Kwame Nkrumah, educated in the US and UK, returned to the Gold Coast with a mission: self-government now. He used strikes, boycotts, and civil disobedience, positive action, to pressure the British. Arrested and jailed, he became a hero. His party won elections while he was behind bars. Released, he led Ghana to independence, the first in sub-Saharan Africa. But Nkrumah's vision was bigger. Our independence is meaningless unless it is linked with the total liberation of Africa. He dreamed of a United States of Africa, organizing Pan-African conferences and supporting freedom fighters. Nkrumah's leadership inspired a continent. The call for unity echoed from Accra to Addis Ababa. Pan-Africanism became the rallying cry for a new era. The dream, Africans governing Africa, together, and the spark caught fire. In 1957, Ghana's independence lit a fuse across Africa. At long last, the battle has ended, Nkrumah declared, and the continent erupted in hope. The 1960s became the decade of independence, 17 nations freed in 1960 alone. Nigeria, Senegal, Mali, Ivory Coast, Congo, one after another, the dominoes fell. Some transitions were peaceful, negotiated by weakened colonial powers. Others, like Algeria and Kenya, fought bloody wars for freedom. The Mau Mau in Kenya, the FLN in Algeria, freedom fighters paid with their lives. New flags rose, new anthems played, and new leaders stepped forward. The dream of self-rule became reality, but independence was just the beginning. Colonial powers hoped to keep economic ties, but Africans claimed their political destiny. The wave was unstoppable. Optimism swept the continent. The cost was high, but the prize was freedom. Africa was finally in charge of its own future. The world watched as a new era began. Independence was a victory, but the challenges were immense. Artificial borders forced rivals into new nations, sparking civil wars. Colonial economies left countries dependent on a few exports, vulnerable to global markets. Factories were scarce. Imports came from former colonizers. Political freedom didn't mean economic independence. Neo-colonialism took root. Building democracy was tough amid ethnic divisions and poverty. Some heroes became dictators, clinging to power. The Cold War fueled instability as superpowers backed friendly regimes. In South Africa, apartheid persisted, a brutal reminder that the fight for dignity was not over. The struggle for true freedom had only just begun. Through it all, Africa's soul, its culture, endured. Colonizers tried to erase languages, music, and art, but failed. After independence, African culture exploded onto the world stage. Music became a weapon and a celebration. Fela Kuti's Afrobeat, Miriam Makiba's anthems, High Life, Rumba. Writers like Chinua Achebe and Ngugi wa Thiong'o reclaimed Africa's story, showing its complexity and richness. Fashion, film, art, African creativity now inspires the world. This cultural renaissance is more than entertainment, it's decolonization in action. It's about telling your own story, on your own terms. Culture became a declaration of freedom. Africa's voice, once silenced, now sings out boldly. The world is finally listening, and Africa is defining itself. Today, Africa's journey is unfinished. The shadows of colonialism linger, poverty, conflict, and dependency remain. But to focus only on problems is to miss the bigger story. Africa is the world's youngest continent, rich in energy and ambition. A new generation is rising, entrepreneurs, activists, scientists, committed to building a better future. The spirit of independence has evolved. It's about good governance, economic justice, women's rights, and protecting the environment. Pan-Africanism is reborn in projects like the African Continental Free Trade Area. The future is unwritten, complex, messy, and full of promise. For the first time, Africans are writing their own story. Independence is not a destination, but a promise, dignity, self-determination, and hope. The journey is long, but Africans are at the wheel. The legacy of those who fought for freedom lives on. The work continues every day. Africa's story is still being written, and that in itself is a reason for hope. The best chapters are yet to come.